once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
A murmur of grief rippled through the crowd, the loss of their sister village hitting them with a renewed sense of tragedy. Vosla took a shaky breath, her voice filled with sorrow and confusion.
But if Gubash is gone, why did the Hagaras not return to finish what they started here?
The Cassitan's expression darkened. The Hagaras met a terrible end themselves, in a different war far from here. Their bloodthirsty ways led them to a brutal fate, but that story does not concern Sirendar. What matters is that your people were spared, thanks to the sacrifice of those who came to protect you. The air was heavy with silence, the villagers and warriors of Sirendar staring at the Cassitan, in a mix of awe and confusion. He stood tall, his hand resting gently on the frail woman who had suffered for so long under the weight of their misunderstandings. Her body trembled, but her eyes were filled with a strange mix of relief and fear as she clung to him, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had long since turned against her. The truth has been obscured by fear and pain. Sirendar believed that Gubash had cursed them. They saw the lycanthropes as a sign of the Order of Darkness, a malevolent force that sought to destroy you. But you were wrong. He looked around the room, his gaze settling on the villagers, their expressions a blend of shock and guilt. Instead of seeing the lycanthropes as protectors, you saw them as foes due to misunderstanding. And in your fear, you imprisoned the very one who had fought so valiantly to save you. You used her to destroy any man who tried to stay in Sirendar, believing that you were protecting yourselves from the pain and tragedy that men had brought upon this village for centuries. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of his words pressing down on them like a heavy shroud. The Cassitan's voice grew softer, filled with a sorrowful compassion. She was never meant to be a tool of vengeance. She was meant to be your protector, your ally. But you turned her into a weapon, using her to instill fear and keep outsiders away. He glanced at Cal and the other warriors, their faces pale as they absorbed the gravity of his words. And worse, you used her to turn your own children into lycanthropes, forcing them to bear a burden that was never meant to be theirs. You passed on this curse, believing it to be a necessity, but it was never meant to be this way. Cal felt a cold shiver run down her spine, the truth of his words piercing through her like a blade. She had always believed that they were protecting Sirendar, that their role as warriors was noble and necessary. But now she saw the reality for what it was, a twisted perversion of a gift that was meant to save them, turned into a curse that had tainted their lives.
The Cassitan turned his gaze back to the Gubashian woman, his eyes filled with deep compassion. "You have suffered so much," he said softly, his voice filled with a quiet strength. "I know how much pain and torment you have endured here, how they have used you, tortured you for their own purposes. But you do not have to suffer any longer." He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch light as a feather. "I can take the lycanthropy away from you. If that is your desire, I can free you from this burden." The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. She clung to him, her hands trembling as if afraid to let go.
What would happen if you did?
The Cassitan's expression softened, his eyes filled with a sad understanding. If I take it away, your lifespan will shorten. You will have less than a decade left to live. But those years will be yours, free from this curse. You will be able to choose how you live them, unbound by the pain and suffering that has held you captive for so long. He paused, his gaze steady on hers. The Order of the Light will take care of you, provide for you, so that you can spend your remaining time in peace. You will be safe, free to live as you wish. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at him, her fingers tightening around his cloak. She seemed unable to speak, her voice choked with emotion. The Cassitan looked up at the warriors gathered around them, his gaze serious. This offer extends to all of you. You have been bound by this curse, forced to live lives that were never meant to be yours. If you wish to be free of it, I can release you. You can live out the rest of your natural lives, free to choose your own path. Cal felt her heart race, her mind spinning with the possibilities. A life without lycanthropy, without the constant struggle to control the beast within her. It seemed like a dream, an impossible hope. She glanced at her comrades, their faces filled with the same uncertainty and longing that she felt. The Cassitan's voice was gentle as he continued, "You do not have to decide now. This is not a choice to be made lightly." If in the future, any of you wish to be free of this burden, you need only to seek me out. I will always answer your call. He turned his gaze to Cal, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "If you wish, I can establish a link between us. If ever you need to contact me, for yourself or for your comrades, you will be able to do so with your thoughts alone." Cal felt a surge of emotion welling up inside her, her heart aching with a strange mix of fear, hope, and something she couldn't quite name. She hesitated, her mind racing, before finally nodding. "Yes, please. Do it."
The Cassitan gently laid the Gubashian woman down, his movement careful and reverent. He stood and stepped toward Cal, his eyes never leaving hers. "May I touch your face?" He asked softly, his voice filled with a quiet respect. Cal's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She nodded, unable to find her voice. The Cassitan's hand was warm as he cupped her cheek, his touch gentle and reassuring. He closed his eyes, murmuring soft, unfamiliar words, and she felt a strange, tingling sensation spreading through her like a current of magic flowing between them. Her heart raced, her mind spinning as the magic pulsed between them. She felt something shift, something deep and profound, as if a part of her soul was being touched by his. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she savored the warmth, the comfort, the strange, inexplicable connection that seemed to bind them. He opened his eyes and began to pull his hand away. But Cal's own hand shot up, gripping his and holding it against her face. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks as she leaned into his touch, not wanting the moment to end.
Please. Just a little longer.
The Cassitan's eyes softened, his expression filled with a tenderness that took her breath away. He let his hand rest against her cheek for a moment longer, his presence a steady, calming force in the storm of emotion swirling around them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she let go of his hand, her own falling to her side. The Cassitan gently pulled away, his eyes never leaving hers. The link is established. You can always reach me whenever you need. Cal nodded, unable to speak, her heart aching with a strange, bittersweet emotion.
She watched as he stepped back, his gaze lingering on her for a moment before turning back to the Gubashian woman. The silence in the room stretched thin, heavy with the weight of possibility and fear. Herza stood at the edge of the gathering, her eyes clouded with doubt and despair. She looked at the Cassitan, then at the trembling Gubashian woman, her voice breaking as she spoke.
Your offers, your actions, they may doom us. How will we protect ourselves if we lose the power of lycanthropy? How will we keep Sirendar safe?
The villagers murmured among themselves, their expressions reflecting the same fear that gripped their leader. The warriors glanced at one another, their confidence shaken, the foundation of their lives crumbling under the weight of the Cassitan's revelations. Before the Cassitan could respond, the Gubashian woman spoke up, her voice still weak, but carrying a newfound strength.
I have not yet asked him to remove the lycanthropy from me.
She looked up at the Cassitan, her gaze steady despite the exhaustion etched into her features. The Cassitan stepped closer to her, his expression gentle. The Order of the Light is not here to take anything from you that you do not wish to give up. You have suffered a great injustice, one that was not of your making. Our aim is to right a wrong, to give you back the freedom that was stolen from you. Herza took a step forward, her face flushed with a mixture of guilt and defiance.
It's always been this way. This was passed down to me, just as it was passed down to those who came before me. We have lived like this for generations. It is all we have ever known.
The Cassitan turned to her, his eyes filled with a calm, unwavering resolve. Sirendar is not on trial here, Herza. There will be no punishment, no retribution. What happened was a tragedy born of fear and misunderstanding. But now you have a chance to change, to find a new path forward. He turned back to the Gubashian woman, his gaze softening. The choice is yours. If you choose to keep your lycanthropy, no one will force you to give it up. You have more than earned the right to decide for yourself. The Gubashian woman seemed to draw strength from his words. She straightened slightly, her eyes thoughtful.
I am ancient now. My people are gone, lost to time and violence. But I have spent my life protecting Sirendar, even when they did not see me as an ally. I will stay. For now, I will wear the helmet and help protect them.
A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, the tension easing slightly. The villagers exchanged glances, their fear slowly giving way to a tentative hope. Herza's shoulders sagged, the weight of her worries momentarily lifted.
The Cassitan nodded, his expression respectful. If you ever change your mind, let Cal know. She can contact me, and I will come. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the gathered villagers and warriors. But there is one thing that must change immediately. You must stop murdering men who come to stay in Sirendar. A ripple of shock and shame passed through the crowd. Herza's face turned pale, and she looked down, her hands trembling.
Men have brought us so much pain, so much suffering. We thought we were protecting ourselves, protecting our people.
I know, the Cassitan said softly, his voice filled with a deep understanding. Men of many flags have committed atrocities against Sirendar, but now you have a chance to break the cycle of violence and fear. You can start anew, build a future where your people are not bound by the past. He glanced at Cal, then back at Herza. And if you wish, I can correct the blessing that was wrongly administered by the Gubashian priestess so long ago. I can give you back the ability to bear sons. The room fell into a stunned silence. The villagers stared at him, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and hope. Even the warriors seemed taken aback, their eyes wide with uncertainty. The Cassitan smiled gently. But I wonder if that would be a shame. He mused, his gaze sweeping over the women of Sirendar, their beauty and strength shining through their uncertainty. You are all so beautiful, like flowers tended by the hand of the great God on humanity. It is a unique blessing, one that should not be taken lightly. Herza looked up at him, her eyes filled with a cautious hope.
We will discuss it. We will end the practice of killing men who stay too long. And we will begin debates on whether we want sons in our future.
The Cassitan nodded, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. That is all I ask. This choice is yours, and yours alone. Whatever you decide, I will report it to the Order of the Light, so that the truth of Sirendar will be known. The villagers and warriors exchanged glances, the tension in the room slowly ebbing away. They had been given a choice, a chance to change the course of their history. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and unknowns, but it was theirs to choose. The Cassitan looked around the room one last time, his eyes filled with a deep, abiding respect. May you find peace and freedom in whatever form it takes, he said softly. And with those words, the promise of change hung in the air, a fragile, hopeful thing waiting to be grasped.